Hello everyone, and welcome to another interesting game from round 13 of the 2018 Candidates Tournament, here between Shakhriyar Mamedyarov and Alexander Grischuk. Now this game will definitely directly have an impact on the outcome of the tournament, as Shakhriyar Mamedyarov and probably both Grischuk are fighting still for first place in this tournament. Now it's quite an interesting game, and as I didn't have any photos from you in my previous video, here are some of them. Here some nice close-ups. Here we have Fabiano Caruana. Here we have a nice photo of Levon Aronin. It's the first time I actually see him playing with his glasses on. I've never actually even seen him wearing glasses. But okay, here we have a photo of the two of them. I don't know, I'm pretty sure I've never seen a photo of him anywhere wearing glasses. Quite a move for the end of the tournament. Here we have a game from this round. Here we have a clean shave by Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. Here we have a very nice close-up of Alexander Grischuk, and here we have a photo of their cubicles. Here again, Sasha is taking a stroll, checking out Fabiano versus Levon here, and Mamedyarov on the right, enjoying his position against Sasha. So those being the photos, let's see this game. Mamedyarov opens with d4, knight to f6, knight to f3, g6, and g3. Some sort of an Indian game here. Bishop to g7, bishop to g2. We have castles, and d5. C4, and now d captures on c4, transposing into the Neo-Grunfeld defense. Knight to a3, and now c3. Black grabbed the pawn, so now black will decide how to give back the pawn. Grischuk decides to go c3. We have b captures on c3, and now c5. And c5 with the idea of immediately attacking the center. There's a nice bishop on g7. When this knight moves, the bishop will also be eyeing those central squares, and the knight will come to c6, also will be fighting for the center. So a standard Grunfeld idea. Rook to e1, preparing e4, knight to c6, and now bishop to b2. Knight to d5, now inviting white to go for the e4 line, and e4 definitely is one of the most common lines. After knight to b6, white will push d5, knight will move, going for the c4 square, rook to b1, getting the rook out of a1, so this bishop can never harass it. Knight comes to c4, knight captures, and then this bishop will decide whether it wants to move, or maybe white wants to go queen d3 and then give up the dark square bishop. Depends on what you prefer. But after knight d5, Mamedyarov has his own prepared line, queen to c2, c captures on d4, knight captures on d4, and now knight back to f6. Knight captures on c6, b captures on c6, and here c4. You don't really gain anything by grabbing this c6 pawn. If you play bishop captures on c6, black can immediately go rook to b8, and then win the b file. You do have to do something about this. After you play something like rook 8 to b1, then black can go queen to a5 and then gain a lot of activity for the price of this one pawn. That's basically a weak pawn. This bishop will be able to develop itself, maybe to h3, maybe to a6, and then the other rook is coming to c8, and it will be a nice position for black. So after this, b captures on c6, c4 by Mamedyarov. Now comes the bishop to f5, attacking the queen, queen to c1, and now queen to c7. Knight to c2, rook 8 to b8, bishop to c3, not allowing the bishop to become a target for the rook. Also not allowing the queen to come to a5. Bishop captures on c2, queen captures on c2, and now knight to e8. Offering to exchange bishops here. h4 by Mamedyarov, c5, rook e to d1, and now bishop captures on c3. Queen captures, and now knight back to f6. With the idea of guarding the h5 square, he doesn't want to allow Mamedyarov to push h5. Bishop to f3, Mamedyarov now prepares h5, he definitely wants to push it, and now h5 by Grischuk, not allowing it. Rook 8 to b1, rook captures on b1, rook captures on b1, and bringing another rook to the open b file, rook f to b8. And here it's a pretty equal position, almost symmetrical, other than the fact that then Grischuk has a knight and Mamedyarov has a bishop. But the rooks are facing off. There's an isolated a pawn, isolated c pawn. The queens are occupying the c file, and here's a pretty symmetrical pawn structure here on the king side. So definitely an equal position. Here, rook to b3 or rook to b5, both moves are an interesting idea. You want to either allow black to capture your rook, so you will connect your pawns, but rook to b5 was played by Mamedyarov. Seems like a better move than rook to b3. Rook is a bit more active here on the 5th rank, also eyeing the c5 pawn. Here, Grischuk goes knight to e8. He wants to play knight to d6, and only then exchange rook. After rook captures on b5, pawn captures, then the knight from d6 will be ready to protect this pawn when it's pushed to c4. So queen to e3, now with a double attack on the pawn here. Rook captures, pawn captures, and now knight to d6 as planned, and now the queen and knight will try to push this pawn down the board. a4, pushing his own passed pawn, also protecting the b5 pawn, and here c4. Mamedyarov here plays king to g2. King to g2 is a waiting move. He basically he doesn't have a good move here, so he's giving Grischuk the opportunity to make a bad move. If you go for something like bishop to c6, it seems like a reasonable move. The queen is no longer protecting the pawn. You can't really push it to c3. Seems like a reasonable idea. You can't really move the queen since the e7 pawn is hanging, but that's just the idea. After queen to a5, you kind of do have to grab the pawn. Black is attacking your pawn here, and maybe black can even come to e1. These are all the things you have to consider. But after queen captures on e7, then black has this queen to d2 move, protecting his knight, and now preparing to escort this pawn down the board. So now you'd have to go bishop to e4. Now the bishop is covering the c2 square, but after black captures it, and pushing c3, now there is no stopping the c pawn. I mean, of course, black will not win this game, but you have to play queen to e8 check, and then go for some perpetual checking ideas. Queen e5, king moves, queen to c7. Now if black decides to push c2, then you capture on f7, and if black tries to hide, for example, you still capture it, and after queen to f8, again you have a perpetual check. So after this c4 move, king to g2, basically giving Grischuk the opportunity to make a mistake. c3 by Grischuk, and now Mamedyarov plays a bishop to c6, and now it's a different idea. Now Grischuk does go for this queen to a5, but he no longer has the opportunity of bringing his queen to d2, as he already pushed his pawn to c3. So queen to c5 now by Mamedyarov. And here, if you play queen captures on a4, that doesn't really do anything for black. Queen captures on c3, and now knight captures on b5. Queen to d3, pinning that knight on b5. Now comes a6, defending it, and now queen to d8 check. King g7, and queen captures on e7. So again, a pretty equal position. Okay, you do have a passed pawn here, but not really a position you can win. So Grischuk isn't interested in this. After queen to c5, he pushes a6, and now we have e4. A captures on b5, a captures on b5, and now king to h7. Grischuk doesn't want to allow his king to be on the last rank, not allowing any checks and then follow-ups on the check. And now e5. This was Mamedyarov's idea of e4. And now you see that something is happening here. And if Grischuk decided to play knight to f5, then everything is all right here. After bishop to e4, attacking the knight, guarding the c2 square, black can simply push e6, and there's really no way for either side to make progress here. But after this e5 move, I don't know, it was probably Grischuk's will to win the candidates. He played knight captures on b5, and knight captures on b5 is actually the mistake that loses the game. He calculated it precisely, all the lines except one line that basically loses the game. What he saw after this knight captures on b5, he saw that, of course, if queen captures on b5, queen captures, bishop captures, you simply push c2, and there's no stopping the pawn. The pawn queen's on a dark square, and the white has a light square bishop. Another thing, after knight captures on b5, after bishop captures on b5, he thought, okay, this was probably the best idea for white. Now, after e6, white really doesn't have a move here. He can't move the bishop, otherwise you're going to lose the queen. And after a couple of meaningless moves on the king side, king has to move from a light square. Now g captures, and, for example, king to h2. At one point, black will push the pawn to c2, white will have to capture it, and then comes queen captures on b5, and it's a drawn position. So perhaps I haven't seen the interview. Maybe those of you who've seen the interview after the game can share some insight in the comment section. If you have, please do share. After this e5 move, that's probably why Grischuk played it. He played knight captures on b5, and now, of course, if queen captures, Grischuk will win. If bishop captures, then the game is drawn. But he missed one move that loses the game, and feel free to pause the video here and find the winning move for white. Here, Mamedyarov beat Grischuk in this position and destroy his dreams of winning the candidates tournament. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent player. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, here Mamedyarov played e6. And now you have a problem. This knight is now pinned because white didn't capture it. And there's a problem now. Black will not have this e6 move that he was planning to make his position more solid. Now, if you capture it here, then comes queen captures on e7. And now black is lost. King moves, now queen to f6 check, king moves, and now bishop to e4 with checkmating ideas on g6, and there is no defense here. Queen to c7, you can try to help out with the defense so you don't get checkmated, but now queen captures, king moves, queen captures on h5 with check, king moves, and now queen captures, knight on b5, and there's really nothing for you to do here. Even if you push a pawn, white can simply capture it, and with being 2 pawns up, it's a winning game. So big problems for Grischuk for missing this e6 move. So great idea. So here he tried queen to a3 with the idea now, of course, that if you capture the queen, then black will still be able to queen his pawn. But queen captures on b5. Mamedyarov calculates this perfectly. We have c2. Now comes e captures on f7, preparing the queen the f pawn, and now king to g7. You can't really allow this move c1 queen because you get f8 queen, and now you don't really have a defense here. You can't check the white king. The bishop is nicely placed, controlling this diagonal completely. You can go queen to h6 to maybe help out, but simply queen captures. This is there are better moves, but simply queen captures on h6 is simply enough for white to win this. He's up a full piece. So after e captures on f7, king to g7 by Grischuk, and now comes bishop to e4. An excellent move to finish off the game by Mamedyarov, and simply making room for the queen, so the queen is able to come to e8 and help out with some ideas here. c1 queen was played by Grischuk. Mamedyarov played queen to e8, and it was in this position that Alexander Grischuk resigned the game. Why did he resign? Well, there's nothing for you to do. This bishop is completely guarding the king here on this diagonal. There are no checks black can give. Black cannot stop. Black has 2 queens, but even with 2 queens, there's nothing he can do. He can't stop the promotion of the pawn. You can't go something like queen to f4. The pawn is guarding the f4 square. So nothing for you to do here. You could try to escape with your king, but this runs into a forced checkmate. After f8 queen, king to e5, now comes queen b5 check, queen blocks, now queen captures on e7 check, the queen on c5 is pinned, king moves, queen to f6 check, king captures bishop, you can even give up the bishop for a nice forced checkmate, queen e2 check, king moves, and now queen to e6, and this is checkmate. So yeah. That's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. Once again, after this queen to e8 move, Grischuk resigned the game, and I did prepare the final standings here before I forget to show you. Here are the final standings after round 13. Again, it's Fabiano Caruana in first place with 8 points out of 13. Second place is Karyakin, tied with Mamedyarov with 7.5 points. Then comes Ding Liren with 7. Grischuk now with 6.5. See how unfortunate this knight captures on b5 was for Grischuk. There was no way for him to actually win this game, but if he drew the game, then he would be on 7 points, the same as Mamedyarov, and then I have no idea. Maybe if Caruana lost the last round and then either of them won, it would be a lot more interesting. Then Kramnik with 6, Wesley So with 5.5, and Aronyan with 4 in last place. And I also prepared for you the pairings of the final round, round 14, that will be played tomorrow. We have Grischuk with the white pieces against Caruana with the black pieces. So although Grischuk with 6.5 points no longer has the chance of actually winning the tournament, he can very well ruin the tournament for Fabiano Caruana, as he does play some excellent games from time to time with the white pieces. So it's going to be very interesting. Then we have Aronyan versus Wesley So, and this is the only game tomorrow that will have no impact on the actual outcome of the tournament, as neither of them can actually win the candidates. So that's probably just going to be either some nice game that maybe if they will be interested in actually playing it, or maybe just a fast draw. Then we have Karyakin with the white pieces against Ding Liren. So if Karyakin wants to win the candidates, he has to win tomorrow against Ding Liren. Ding Liren is the only one in the candidates who hasn't lost the game so far. So after 13 rounds, not a single loss for Ding Liren. And if Karyakin wants to challenge King Magnus, he has to do what no one was able to do in the candidates, to beat Ding Liren. And then in the last game is Kramnik versus Mamedyarov. Also an extremely important game, so Mamedyarov has to play against Kramnik. And Kramnik with the white pieces is one deadly beast. Even though he's not playing for a win in the candidates, he's still going to be a very tough opponent for Mamedyarov. So it's basically impossible to predict anything here. The only thing I know is that if Karyakin and Caruana are drawn after tomorrow's game, then it's actually Karyakin who will be who will win the candidates, as he does have a better tiebreaker. But I'm not sure about what happens if Mamedyarov, Karyakin, and Caruana, all three of them, are tied in first place. Then I believe it's Mamedyarov who will win, but not sure. If any of you have some nice idea about how the tiebreaker is resolved, again, also do share in the comments. So yeah, those were the pairings, the final standings. I do hope you enjoyed that. I will eagerly be waiting tomorrow's games, as I'm sure all of you will as well. So once again, I would like to thank Nikki for her photos of the 2018 Candidates Tournament. As usual, you can find all of the links to her social media in the description below. Thank you all for watching, and as usual, you can check two of my previous videos here, and I will see you soon, probably tomorrow morning with a nice Tal versus Botvinnik Game 12. Thank you all, and see you soon.